Good morning to everyone. And I want to point you to the question that is in the chat over here. How has what happened at SVB affected you or not? And so I am so grateful. We have an amazing panel, I guess you could say, of varied voices to bring the SVB situation front and center and how it may have an impact or how it's likely to have an impact on you and your career. And so I brought some friends along and we're gonna kickstart this and have them introduce themselves. So I'm gonna start with you, Ethan, because you really are like you busted a move and I love that. So please introduce yourself briefly and just if you could, I know this is kind of like a cheesy thing to do, but I think that it's a fun exercise. If we made a movie about what happened with SVB, what would you like entitle it?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. So my name is Ethan Evans. I'm a retired vice president from Amazon, where I started Amazon Prime, and I now work as an executive coach helping people with their careers, which is what attracted me to the SVB story. If we made a movie about SVB, I'd make it like a funny disaster movie in the sense of like Sharknado or something. So I don't have the right, but it would be something of like, um, a comedy of errors kind of disaster. So
Okay, so it would be a spoof,
Banknado.
right?
Yeah, Banknado.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Fantastic. Over to you, Aman. Introduce yourself, please, and your movie title, too.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Aman Kidwai. I'm a senior reporter at Morning Brew, focused on HR, workplace strategy, future of work. Yeah, if I was going to do a name for this movie, I'd probably think about one of those horror thrillers, like The Call is Coming from Inside the House kind of thing. So something like that, maybe Dark House or Inside the House. One of those, there is no bad guy. You're just kind of scared. You're just hearing scary phone calls. And that's the horror of it, is the really scary words you're hearing in phone conversations.
Maybe like a West Wing-y thing, right?
West Wing, but horror.
West Wing does horror. Okay, I like that. If horror and West Wing had a baby,
Aaron Sorkin, don't steal that idea.
fantastic. Jack Kelly, who are you?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Lauren. So I'm a senior contributor for Forbes and co-host of the Blind Ambition podcast that covers the tech scene in terms of career-related matters. I'm also the CEO of a search firm for, 25 years, placing people on Wall Street. With respect to the title, I'll deviate from you guys because I don't want to give a title to a movie for it, because it's just so much pain that has been caused by the Silicon Valley Bank implosion, and so much fear emanating from it, so much concern about the banking system as a whole. So I want to dive right into, and I think that's what we're going to do, Lauren, is really talk about what happened, what are the ramifications, and what people can do about it to protect themselves.
Yes. Thank you, Melissa Richards Pearson. I see you. I was actually hit by SVB as well. One of my clients had all their money there. So just a small micro interaction, right? Of how this is affecting somebody, and we're seeing this everywhere. We're going to start back with Ethan, and I know that you came to me because thankfully you had put an article out there on LinkedIn and identified two key areas as you see it that this national issue has on each one of us. So there is obviously impact and trickle down effect that happens when such a large business related, economic and financial related issue is happening over there. And that's what we want to get to. Just because it's happening over there doesn't mean you, person in your career or job search, needs to put their head down under. And so help us understand your two key points.
Yeah, absolutely. So I approached Silicon Valley Bank as a story from what can an individual person apply in their career by looking at it. And so it's less the direct impact of the bank than the analogy. And the analogy I saw is Silicon Valley Bank was operating. Our other guests will talk about the risks they had, but they had some money in the bank and they were servicing their depositors. And then the depositors became fearful or concerned and started withdrawing their money to protect themselves. And no bank has all the money in the vaults that they've taken in. So if you go to any bank and take out all the money or try to, they will go under. No bank can withstand everyone withdrawing at once. And my point was perception is reality. The same is true for, say, a project at your work. If people start to believe your project is going to be late, then what happens is one person tells the other, oh yeah, Ethan's project, it's not going to make the deadline. And the other person says to themselves, oh good, I can push off what I was going to do for Ethan. And that contagion, which I think Jack will amplify in a way, can quickly kill your project where it was fine or it had a chance of being fine. And because people believe it's not fine, it very quickly becomes finished. And we saw with Silicon Valley Bank, from a practical viewpoint, they were in no one's news on a Wednesday except some esoteric financial feeds. And by Friday, they had been shut down. So it took 48 hours to go from like a few floating questions of is SVB okay to gone. At least that's my perception from outside the industry. And then the second part is the herd follows the pattern. So if you go out one level in the circle from the people who are working with you directly, or the people who may have never heard of Silicon Valley Bank, what they hear is, oh, a bank went under. I wonder if my bank's in trouble. I wonder if I need to get my money out of my bank. And so it is a domino problem. Well, the same thing can happen in your career where one level out, people have no idea why, say, my project became late. Maybe it's because someone decommitted. They didn't think they had to hit the date anymore. But then the story becomes, oh, Ethan misses his deadlines. And so in your career, you have to be aware that perception becomes reality. And then the larger group just hears that echo and assumes that you did it, even though it was circumstances. And so you have to manage those things and try and stay ahead of that, catch them quickly. And maybe it's possible Silicon Valley Bank could have taken on additional partners or done something else to save itself if it had been more proactive. But the leaders there tried to just stand pat too long until the run was started, and then there was no time for them to do anything else. If you look at some other banks that got in trouble, they have taken actions to protect themselves. So taking on additional deposits from elsewhere or support from other banks in order to be stable. So those are two big points.
Andrew says, this sounds a bit like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right, Ethan? The fear of rumors becomes reality. And so before we move on to Aman, quickly, what's the solution to this? I mean, how do you mentioned managing it, right?
Yes.
How do you stop the spin when something does get derailed?
Well, the key you mentioned earlier, don't put your head in the sand. When you hear that spin, you can't ignore it. You have to act on it early to counter it, and maybe even to go out to your stakeholders and reassure them or reaffirm their commitments early. Because if you let it take hold, it becomes a snowball rolling down the hill, the self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think what you have to do is act quickly. And I think, again, not being from the financial sector, what SVB did not do was act quickly. They knew that they had some poor investments on the books, and they tried to sort of do the monkey's la 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 thing far too long, and they got caught.
Fantastic. Okay, so your solution to this, as far as your career, is early and often.
Yes,
right?
early and often. Be proactive.
Be proactive. And so that also comes down to having good self-awareness and also having excellent communication skills. So these are really important, because when you are in that situation, you may find yourself defensive. You may find yourself, blaming other people, and that's not going to help your case.
No,
So,
saying, oh, these depositors should have more trust in us is a useless action. Saying we went to somebody else and got an extra 30 billion, which one of the other banks did, and so we have plenty of money. Here it is on our books. That's useful. SVB didn't do anything useful to actually change their situation.
Understood. Aman, oh, boy, in your article, you talked about how HR leaders have had no shortage of opportunities to maintain order during chaos, right? It's like it's like a proverbial shit show all over the place, right? We saw it with the pandemic, we saw it with remote, we saw it with all these different things are happening. And so I'm curious, when you say that there's another look at the opportunities for today's newly empowered HR leaders, talk to us about what those opportunities are available at this point, and also some of your key strategies for us in our careers.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think that if you think about maybe the role of HR traditionally 5 or 10 or longer years ago, it was really about bringing people in and reducing the legal liability of employing humans of a company, basically. And that has shifted intensely and dramatically and was ongoing even before the pandemic, but I think came into light in a much stronger and more prominent way over the course of layoffs, the great resignation, quiet quitting, et cetera, all of these different things, the rounds of layoffs just now. And just that, there's a real lift that comes from being better in that arena of people management and of putting a little bit more thought and care into your policies and strategies. And from the perspective of an HR person, it's maybe an empowering moment because you realize the different opportunities you may have had for intervention. I think it's unfair to say backward looking that they should have, seen this coming with SVB or something. Of course, that's super unfair. Anyone imagining that they have money in the bank certainly thinks that they have access to it if it's a business account and if it's with SVB, a well-known, well-established entity. However, today, going forward, you can really think about it as like HR is they run payroll, right? And so if you run payroll, you have a responsibility to make sure that goes out. And maybe you are putting that money, the payroll money, somewhere different, somewhere more appropriate for it. So that's kind of like the idea of a more empowered HR taking control and doing something different or better in that, in the interest of that. I think for people in general, it's just that, you can be affected by so much. And it's kind of something we've discussed in the past, which is just there's an imperative for better leaders, for people who do not bury their heads in the sand, for people who think about the impact of other people, for people who are going, okay, our VC told us to bank with this organization, but should we, and is there due diligence that we can do? So I think those are kind of some of the things that, when you think about HR, you have some power in the business, you have some authority to say, okay, is this right? Is this safe? And I also think you have a really
We have some feedback here. I'm not sure where it's coming
Sorry,
from.
is that coming from me or?
Oh, it's better now. It's a little bit, yeah. So I think what we'll do, sorry, Aman, but because I do want to get back to this because it also it's still coming out. So I'm not sure where it's happening. Of course, it's live, so nobody can say that we faked this.
No worries, it's all good, Laura.
We'll move over to you, Jack. But before we do, I also wanted to thank you, Rachel. Rachel's a rock star. It's also been shocking seeing some of the reporting saying that DEI activities were distracting. That's crap, right? And calling out the diversity in leadership as the potential contributor to the collapse. So, this is obviously a comment that came in real time, but I just have to ask you, is this leadership?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Lauren, it's interesting. There's been a lot of talk about that, right? And I think people are missing the mark, because they're kind of casting SVB as being woke, and because they're woke, they dropped the ball and everything fell apart. What I feel, there's certain merit to what they're trying to say, but I think they're just trapped in this ideology as opposed to reality. What I mean by that is this. Let's take, for example, Silicon Valley Bank had a baseball team, right? And what they would do is every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, they leave at 12 o'clock and play baseball and practice and go to games. You're going to take time away from the actual work by doing something else. So I don't think it's so much of a woke ideology or DEI or anything like that. I think it's priorities. And Ethan pointed out, very, very succinctly, that they weren't focusing, and not to kind of mix metaphors here, focusing on the ball. They were focusing on other things and not looking at the money, not looking at the long duration bonds they have, not marking their bonds to market. So they just lost sight of it. And that's what drove it to it. But maybe if they didn't get involved with other extraneous items and events and taking time away, they would have had more time for the business. And I think what happens too across corporate America, and we don't like to talk about it because it's not too comfortable to talk about, and most people don't because they'll get canceled, is that if, let's say, you focus, it's more fun to focus on DEI than it is to do risk management. Risk management is hard. You have to do numbers. You have to do figures. You're responsible for things. But if you're doing DEI, you can pat yourself on the back and say, look how virtuous I am. Look what we're doing. We're doing this. We're doing that. We're having these meetings. We're having these events, these clubs. Sure, that's fun. Who doesn't want to do it? That's great. You're helping people and you're not really doing like risk management, which is boring and sucks and hard work. But that's what you need to do. And I think with a lot of companies, one of the takeaways, hopefully, from this is they're going to have to realign what they're focusing on. Do you want to have DEI? Absolutely. Do you want to, have, include an inclusive workforce? Absolutely. But you can't lose sight of what the business is. You got to make sure you understand your risk. You have to have compliance. You have to have controls. You have to make sure you're making profits. So I think this has to be a wake-up call for companies and workers to step up and say, wait a minute, what are you guys in leadership doing? Come on. We're going to be in trouble because if you screw up, I'm going to lose my job. And I'm going to lose my job in a really tough job market. And it's going to be, white collar recession where it's going to be really hard to find another one. So kind of, hey, pay attention.
They're a big company, though.
I'm going to tie this together from some of these things in the chat, right? Because what the question is how is this impacting our careers? So, we live in an unbelievably wonderful and diverse world, right? And so I'm curious, here it says it's essential and it's not just about parties, right? And Shiana says, what is doing DE&I anyway? Great freaking question. I love you. So, what this means is, as somebody who is in the job market, where maybe that's the top criteria, right? To make sure that I am in a company that isn't just a bunch of white dudes. No offense to you guys or anybody here, right? Because that's not the way our world looks. And it's also not necessarily equitable. Yeah. So how does this kind of blaming, shaming, pointing the finger at DE&I impact the person that is either in the current job or in their career transition?
I would just say that it's extremely problematic. The idea of tying a company's, DE&I initiatives to their failure is unserious. It's an unserious comment, to be completely frank. It's not an and/or with risk management. It's not an and/or with anything. It's not the same people even doing those things. Typically, SVB was not some, over the top on diversity initiatives kind of company to begin with. The people who are saying that are just drawing a line between two things. One thing that they didn't like, which they think is companies spending too much time on this stuff, and then the failure because they want to, quite frankly. there's nothing about this that, it's really problematic because it feeds into this idea that there's backlash against this. And I think that backlash is not as prominent as people want it to be. And it's mostly contained within the people who have power already, who get disproportionately quoted in the media and get to say these things like woke ideology took down SVB. Like that should not have gotten published. That's something that a journalist should have heard.
But this is what did happen. I mean, the person in charge of risk, the CEO, the executives were very busy with things other than running their business.
I don't think
it's not a case of saying, hey, do away with DEI. It's not a case of saying about woke, because it just muddies the waters. The reality is you're a business and you have to focus on the business. You have to make sure you have revenues. You have to make sure you have profits. You have to make sure you're doing the right thing. You make sure that you're not playing accounting tricks, and anything that takes away from it is going to be problematic. It's as simple as that. It doesn't mean get rid of everything. It doesn't mean that you have to do certain things, but as a business, you have to run a business. Look at all the companies are doing now because they finally woke up. Meta is laying off people because they realized, hey, we hired too aggressively and this was ridiculous. We have vanity hires. We have fake work going on. And they're waking up to the fact that with high inflation and high interest rates, they can't do that anymore. They have to change the game. You can't go on where for a decade plus, the Fed kept inflation to a low, interest rates ridiculously, artificially manipulated low. So these banks on Wall Street and these tech companies were able to get pretty much free money. And that's where they were able to hire like crazy and do all these things and have these unicorn companies. But now
none of that is DEI.
High interest rates, right? And you have high inflation and high costs. You can't do it anymore. And we're in a different world, and it's going to be a lot of problems. And these companies have to really focus on what they're doing on their own business.
Go, Ethan.
Well, you're right about focus on the business. The thing I think Aman has made the point is claiming that DEI is the main distraction from focusing on the business is a red herring.
That's not what I'm saying, Ethan.
It's not what you're saying. It's what
anything. It doesn't have to be just DEI. It could be anything. Anything you're doing that takes up too much time away from it, that leads it to a company to be in danger. You have to say, hey, we have to really be efficient. Mark Zuckerberg, who's much smarter than I am, is like, hey, this is a year of efficiencies. All these other companies say, hey, this is a year of austerity. And what they're but they're dancing around it, but really they're saying the same thing I am, but not so directly. It's like, hey, we have to kind of wake up and we can't take things for granted now. And we have to hunker down and we have to get through what's probably going to be a recession. We have to get through that, maybe get something worse and focus, because if we don't, our businesses are going to be in jeopardy and all the employees are going to be in jeopardy because they could lose their jobs.
Okay. I want to bring this back to everyone and how this impacts not only our audience, but for all of us, even sitting right here, right? We're seeing an overglut of candidates on the marketplace right now. I mean, every single day, it's like it's like what it looks like in Colorado every day with a snow dump, right? It's just and it's just piling on and piling on. So how are we going to be able to take this? Because you got to be able to take the lessons and then figure out how to apply them to today's marketplace. So how do we, as we wrap up here, what is your best piece of advice, point of view with what candidate out there or career climber over here should do in light of what's happened with this, huge issue impact? How should we be different or do something, change our perception?
Well, certainly one thing is there are winners in every situation. I hear, I coach a number of people that because of layoffs, they've gained responsibility. Their peer leader was let go and the two smaller teams were folded under them. So while it is true that there's a set of people that need to worry about their career or try and find new jobs, and we can address that as well, remember, every change also creates opportunity.
Totally.
And for a lot of the people at these companies that do need to focus, if you can show that you're one of those people who is focused and is managing risk and is delivering value, then there's a chance to move up. at the same time that unfortunately other people are moving out. And so we can also address how they can find jobs, but there is, remember, all changes create opportunity for somebody, and you can try to be that somebody. And I think that is a big opportunity.
How you address risk, and I'm also going to weave in there efficiency and in Jack's words, where you're focusing on the ball, whatever that's included. I also will follow up with this question from Courtney, so you guys start thinking about it. Do you believe that we're in the middle of a cyclical or secular shift? So we'll follow up with that. Aman, what is the takeaway that you are offering for people in their careers, current jobs, or in transition?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that the promise of a full-time job is not as stable and secure and uplifting as it previously was. And we have lots and lots of evidence of that beyond just SVB. So if you were looking to act on that reality, and we have lots of evidence that this is happening, but many people are choosing to go freelance, to start their own business. And if you're not in that class of company that's, going for the next unicorn, and you're really just looking to start kind of like a normal, stable, small business, or your own, be your own freelance, you are reducing the risk. You now, instead of one source of income, you now have maybe 4 or 5. This is tougher to manage. I'm not, having done it. I think we've all probably been freelancers or multi-type workers in the past. It's not easy, but it is easier than it used to be. And I think when you're weighing the decision, my observation is just that the full-time job is offering less than maybe it used to in the long run. And so there is a lot of opportunity into taking matters into your own hands for your own career, whether it's to get the development you want, whether it's to get the type of projects that you want. It's just a really strong pull that exists that I think is a little bit easier to do now today.
Okay. So it's, reconsider the other paradigms, right? Or make your own, right? Make your own. Jack.
I think we're at an inflection point right now. This is the time of a period of time where forget about Triless Tuesdays, acting your wage, all that kind of stuff, quiet quitting. It's over, right? That stuff is over right now. You have to take active control over your career. No one is going to come and save you. No one's going to knock on your door and say,
we get like a neon sign that says no one is going to save you.
No one is going to say, no one's going to knock on your door and say, hey, here's a job, Jack. Congratulations. So what you have to do is twofold. One, if you have a job now, you have to do everything in your power to hold on to that job. You have to go, if you're working remote, go into the office 5 days a week. Make yourself known. Make yourself indispensable. You have to be that go-to person so that when, I'm not even saying if, when there are going to be layoffs, you're not going to be targeted because they're going to say, Lauren, Ethan, Aman, you're doing such great work. We need you. You're staying. And then the other person who's not really doing the work is going to get let go. So you have to give it everything you have. That doesn't mean kissing up your boss and being a sycophant. It just means working hard, making yourself known. And that's good for your career anyway. Right. Number 2, simultaneously hedge your bets. Find some good recruiters, find some great career coaches, some resume writers, just in case. You don't want to get laid off. And the first day you're like, oh man, what do I do? And you're lost. So you want to start now while you're working and making yourself indispensable. You're also going to get in touch with your network, with your career coaches, with your resume writers who are going to help you be prepared. They're going to keep their eyes out for new jobs, new opportunities. So this way, if God forbid you lose your job, you're already started. The wheels are in motion. You feel confident. You have your team behind you. You've already sent out resumes. Maybe you have some informal, interviews. Maybe you have real interviews. So the wheels are turning. This is not a time to be complacent. This is not a time to take it easy. This is not a time to coast. This is a time where you have to take action. You have no choice. You have to do it. Right. And not only that, you have to do that with your funds, with your resources. If you have a certain amount of money, you got to make sure where you're putting it. What are you investing in? What banks? What credit cards? All that kind of stuff. So you have to be very thoughtful and very careful to get through this because this is going to last a while.
Okay, so that we're going to wrap up because I want to be fair to the great audience that we always have and their comments. It's coming up to 9 o'clock. I'm just going to summarize what you just said, Jack, because I'm 100% with you, and I'm playing the role of a lot of people that we talk to. I don't have time because I'm so busy holding on to my job right now. So I don't have time to actually go and be proactive. I don't have the resources. I just got let go, and I'm concerned about my severance, right? Because that's going to run out, and I don't know if I could afford to do X, Y, or Z, right? And so I just want to put this out there so that you all hear it. VPs and C-suiters are suggested, at least, and everyone else, right, to create a line item in their budgets to keep themselves current in the marketplace. It's roughly between 5 and 10% that you, out of pocket, not your company, should be spending on ways to increase your professional development. So this includes courses, this includes upskilling. The market is moving, and it's not going to wait for you. It's really hard to say this because I want everyone to be a top candidate, but those who invest are going to win. What can I say? And this isn't a self-promotion thing. This is just, I mean, I don't care. You take it off of Udemy. Do what you need to do, but don't pretend like it's automatically going to happen because, you know, you think you're great. Like there is a real differentiator in the marketplace for people who are proactive, as Jack would say, is don't sit there and be complacent. And most people, with all due respect, they wait until the axe falls. And so heed this as a warning, not as a hand slap. Heed this as a warning, as like, you guys need to know this. I'm not gonna like create these lives and bullshit anybody. We got 3 amazing experts here who are essentially concurring with this. So find your great recruiters, your trusted recruiters, find your excellent career coaches and top resume writers who understand what's happening in the marketplace right now. Keep your eyes and ears open. I will include the articles for Ethan's article, Aman's, and Jack's in the comments. I thank you so much, everyone, for being here as you were in the audience and watching. Thanks for hanging around, and for the 3 awesome people that showed up today and made it happen. I appreciate you. Hang around for a second as we end this and the broadcast, but not kick you out of the green room. Okay.
Thanks, Lauren.
Bye.
Thank you.